Welcome to the TryPod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. I'm Jacob Wynn, and I'm here to preview NRL round 14, and that is off around 13, where I'll be honest, I was cooking. 3-0 sweep. We hit Dragons -5.5. We hit the Tigers with a great comeback. They fell short in terms of grabbing the 2 points, but not in terms of the +8.5 start we had. And then the Warriors getting it done. Made to feel a little bit nervous on Sunday, but they did cover the -1.5 and were in control and played really well, leading them to a 36-30 win, which meant we had a sweep. But of course, that Barnett injury, finding out afterwards it's season ending, is devastating and incredibly unfair for New Zealand. My heart goes out to Warriors fans there. The sharpshooters went 1 and 2. We did have another occasion where the best bet or the pick by a sharpshooter aligned with a best bet, and that's only lost once this whole season. It was something like 8 wins, 1 loss in those circumstances. That was Benny Howard, who usually isn't available to send us a clip, but because I did a Thursday preview of round 13, Benny had the identical pick as me with the Tigers plus the start. So welcome to the winner's circle, Benny, because he had to wait about 10 weeks for his second tip. And I have got several sharpshooter clips in the chamber as well. We covered all the games on Sunday night, right? So plenty of Broncos talk, as you could understand. And I got a lot of your comments into the show as well. Have your say now. If you weren't here Sunday, what do you think is wrong with Brisbane at the moment? They've got an absolute must win in the M1 Derby coming up. If you're interested in sort of everything I touched on in terms of what I think is wrong and where it all stands, you'll find that in your feed. I did let people know, sadly, that that's going to be the last regular recap show that I can commit to this season. So to clarify, I'm just going to proceed giving everything into the Tuesday pod. In terms of that's coming out at this time, 5:30 every Tuesday. Apart from Origin weeks where we get shifted around, maybe we do have an extra show here or there. And I'll continue with the best bets in the first 5 minutes. I think taking away the Sunday commitment, it hurts me. It's not what I wanted to do. I explained, I love the audience and I respect, you guys, and I want to deliver the best I can, but it's just the best call I can make right now in the interest of me managing everything I need to manage, and then to still be able to put the best possible preview and tips out on a Tuesday. I hope that's what I can do. And I appreciate you guys being here right now. If you got a second, please hit that like button on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can subscribe on YouTube as well as any podcast player. You never know if that little moment, that split second, could be the difference between keeping one of your favorite shows alive or not. We've done it for 11 years of TryPod, and in 11 years, we have won 59% of our best bets. In 2025, we have won 59% of our best bets so far, and I've got 3 to share for the round coming up, so let me know what you think of these. I am going Storm -13.5 at $1.85 on Friday, hosting the Cowboys. The Storm are basically full strength. Grant's back in. Howarth came back last week. Xavier Coates at home, they're so hard to beat. The Cowboys are a hot and cold team. I can see the Cowboys sort of trying to give it a big shake, but if the game gets out of hand, I think the Storm can withstand the Cowboys' possession, but I don't think the Cowboys can hold Melbourne out for too much of this one. So I've got Melbourne winning big on Friday. On Saturday, I'm going Sharks -5.5 at $1.87, also sports bet against the Warriors. I think this is a very tough spot. It's a tough travel spot. It's ridiculous how many games the Warriors have played away from home in the last sort of month and a half. While the Sharks are off a bye, Warriors are off a short turnaround. We talked about the big loss of Barnett there. You really would have wanted him against Fanua Blake. And I've got the Sharks, who were horrendous and cost me a best bet, to be fair, 2 weeks ago at home to the Roosters. But I actually have more confidence that they'll bounce back because of that, playing at Shark Park again. And then on Sunday, I'm actually going Souths +8.5 at $1.90. That is on Better, Ladbrokes, Neds against Canberra. I know it's a huge occasion for the Raiders, who are absolutely rolling, but the Raiders also are desperate for a bye, could be running out of juice. They'll try and sustain, or as Tapane said, empty the tank before their bye, because it is a monumental occasion for Papali'i breaking the club appearance record. But South's getting back Jack Whiten and Cody Walker to a team that has displayed a lot of toughness. For me, don't need them to get the win, but I think they can make a great game of this. So those are my 3 best bets. I'd love to hear the way you see those in the comments, guys. And as you can see on screen, I've already got Thursday night on the display. Knights, Manly. It's in Newcastle. The Seagulls are a 6.5 to 7.5 point favourite. Newcastle comes in off an awful loss to the Dragons, while Manly are off a major win. But Kalen Ponga will be back at fullback. So as you can see there, Sharp to 6, Cogger to 7. Leo Thompson is out for 4 weeks. Brodie Jones is going to start front row. Manly gets back Jake Trbojevic to 13. Toff Sipley is straight swap in for Aloye at prop, who's out. Still no Tom, although Lehigh Hopewadi is such a talent, isn't he, in his own right? I personally, when I look at players like Hopewadi and to a lesser degree Kohler, and guys know I love Farlongo in Melbourne. Like, I'm looking at players who are superstars, but they can't play their natural position because of somebody else who's an awesome player at their own club. Aren't they the type of guys you want to try and get for Perth? Sort of like the Dolphins did with Hammer. Everyone understood Hammer had to be starting for an NRL team. It's just that the Cowboys had Drinkwater. So I put it this way, Hopewadi is going to be very high on several clubs' wish lists, but especially a new venture, I would suggest. So the fullback battles where, you turn your attention to first, that'll be mighty intriguing. Of course, Newcastle's going to lean on their captain. They got nowhere else to turn for their attacking fortunes. But the thing is, when you are one-dimensional, Manly can be well aware and focused on squeezing the time and space for the Knights' main man. Of course, Bradman Best remains out too. Defensively, I'm less concerned about Newcastle. Like, I do expect the Knights stand up here. Manly's going to test you out because Manly does have a lot of speed and plays enterprising footy, but I feel like the Knights are actually a sound defensive team. It's just basically, can Newcastle score 3 tries in this game? It's sort of hard to see the Knights covering without at least around 3 tries. And my secondary issue would be, is it just over? Like, at some point, it could just be over for the Knights and the Adam O'Brien era, and it could end really ugly. I mean, let's just review the Knights' whole season. Since round 2, the Knights have 2 wins, and one is against Souths, who were missing, of course, Cam Murray, Jack Whiten, Latrell Mitchell, Cody Walker. And then the Knights have one other win since then, and that's against Penrith, who were missing Edwards, To'o, Cleary, Martin, Yeo. Kind of important players to those sides. Those are the only games Newcastle has won. So are Newcastle just a dumpster fire? Like, you do sort of expect effort at home. And I do look at the Knights list and say, look, they're capable. But that's the thing about teams that are underperforming. On paper, they look like they should be getting better results, but there are deeper issues. For that reason, I lean to the plus 7.5, but I'm not risking my money to find out if there's any fight left in the Novocastrians. Welcome to the chat, guys. JD Pogo, still don't know why they don't play Hastings. It's like, that's part of the issue of the sort of the rotting core, is Hastings alone is on 700, 800K, but there's clearly sort of a fallout, or the coach doesn't trust him, or there's a clash with teammates, and it's not the first time it has happened with Hastings as well. Luke says Manly for a carve up. I saw before Undertaker said Manly 13 plus. Colt says Knights are dreadful to watch. Undertaker bang on 13 plus. Luke says he got Manly early minus 5.5. I think there's another Luke in the TryPod group that tipped it at minus 3.5. Benny in the bets. We didn't get his clip tonight, but he is in the chat. Appreciate it. Back to the wall spot for the Knights, but will it matter? That's how I feel. Like, the Knights should show up here at home. They owe it to the fans that are going to come out on a cold Thursday night. But whether they will or not, as Frizzy Boy says, Knights for the spoon. Nat, agree. Manly 13 plus. DCE still proving a point. Yeah. And I said that DCE did everything he could last weekend, but Manly, the sort of side that senses when your energy levels are dipping a little bit, they'll be the first ones to put their foot on the throat of an opponent. We always talk about Manly being a bully, and the Knights are sort of primed to be bullied here unless they can really stand up and take a stand. But the Undertaker says it's also the exact kind of game Manly lose. Like, man, that's the thing about Manly, that their yo-yo form this season as well. they've laid some eggs of their own. You know what? We got an early best bet here because the Padonis' pick is on the Thursday night game. So let's listen to how Mateos sees it.
G'day, guys. Happy Tuesday. Padonis here. Wasn't on the show last week. Couldn't make a video in time for Winnie's revised time slot he had for that Thursday edition. But normal programming resumes here, ready to go again. We're going to take the first game of the round, Newcastle Knights, plus 8.5, and that's $1.80 on Better. Just looking at these two teams, I don't believe the gap to be as large as what the spread indicates here from the bookmakers. I was quite surprised to see the team list without Turbo, but the line didn't really shift. I thought that the line factored his inclusion. Ponga is back, and that's a big in for him after he'll be well rested for having the game off last week. I know that the Knights have been struggling. They lose Leo Thompson here. I just think there's enough in the forward pack to still match with what Manly's got, given that they're still out with Alloway joins Takiaho on the sidelines, as well as Paseka still out for the season with that ACL. Jake Turbo is back, but we've seen this year he's not the player that he once was. I like the fact that the Knights have still decent edges in Kai Pearce-Paul and Lucas to counteract what Manly offer. I think they can defend Hamoli well. I think Evans had his breakout game last week on the back of Origin 1. Lightning might strike twice, but I'll bet against that. And I just think Knights at home, season on the line, they're going to be up for the fight here. And I had it closer to 4.5 here myself. So to grab 8.5 is an even better advantage. Knights are live here to win off the stick for me. So happy to play with the points. Good luck. Gamble responsibly.
So there you go. Padonis is taking the ugly duckling in the Knights. And I can definitely appreciate the way he sees it. And I think the line should be lower. And you've just got to factor in, like for me, there's that doubt of, is there a bit of give up factor in the Knights? Like, does this become a season from hell? But if you think that they're going to give a good account of himself, and in a week where you do get KP back in the fold, can definitely understand. And I respect, playing aside that you've got to sort of hold your nose to want to jump on them. Now, for some reason, I feel like my display behind me has dropped out. So it's a bit confronting in terms of why my face has to look that big. And now I'm not sure how to get the display back easily. Corey says, exactly what I was thinking. Manly are like the Warriors of yesteryear. So, yeah, inconsistency with Manly, whereas the Knights have been more consistent, but consistently really poor is the problem. So best bet from Padonis, he's getting the plus 8.5. As I said, line's 6.5, 7.5, but he's got $1.80, alt line 8.5. So that's a good amount of points for Newcastle at home. Let's move to Friday, where I do have a best bet on this next one. If I can pull up a graphic, I will, but I'll let you know. It's at Amy Park, early slot, Storm, Cowboys, and of course the Storm are the favourites. 14.5 point favourites the Storm are, though. While most bookies are at 14.5, I did play minus 13.5 on Sportsbet. This is the biggest line of the weekend, despite the fact that it is 4th versus 6th. I feel like this year, the ladder, more than ever, has really not mattered. Like, ladder position has counted for very little this year. I think I got my display back as well. So I'll try and show you the team list as we go through the games. You've got, like, this weekend, you got bottom 4 teams. I mean, even last week, what was Penrith was coming last on the ladder, still favoured by a converted try or so. You don't read into the ladder positioning too much. I think we mostly understand that the Storm are fairly well superior to North Queensland. Melbourne only won ugly on the Gold Coast. And, just another point about the big favourite on a Friday night this year, for whatever reason, there have been a lot of double-digit underdogs actually been able to win outright on Friday night. So be wary of that. I don't see it happening this week with Grant and Coates to return, and Howarth got back in last weekend as well. And then the Cowboys game, of course, was the game we did have a best bet on, where the Cowboys were up 32-6, copped a mighty scare. That 26-point lead dwindled down to 4 points against West. But North Queensland clung on, got a valuable 2 points all the same. All 4 Origin players backed up for Payton last week. and he's able to name the same 17 with Taulagi still sidelined. I am laying 13.5 with Storm here, as I said. Now, I told you last week, I could have actually been 5-0 because the closest I came to players was Melbourne minus 11.5 and Raiders at Pick'em. The thing about that Melbourne minus 11.5, they won by half a point, which is so annoying for me when I don't play it. But the truth is Melbourne probably didn't deserve to win by a margin last week. They got 3 runaway tries and were really sloppy. However, full strength this week, I expect full focus because you have to respect the capability of the Cowboys. It's a long flight. It's a long trip for North Queensland. I can see the visitors sort of having a crack. To win in Melbourne, you know you're going to be bold. You're going to have to take chances. That can also backfire. And while the Cowboys are dangerous, if they get, prolonged possession, they'll throw it around. But I do think the Storm's defense is tough enough to soak up a fair bit. And when it comes to Melbourne with ball in hand, I don't think this Cowboys pack can stand up. I don't think the Cowboys forwards can hold their gloves up for the full 80. And I know the cracks will open up for Melbourne on the back of that. So I'm going to lay the 13.5. I've got another tip from a sharpshooter in the chamber. It's going to be a try scorer tip from Benny Williamson. Let's just see what else everyone is commenting. Wolfie, would you play a Knights under total? I don't particularly lean too Manly, so I was actually looking at the overall total, 45.5 in that game, just thinking sort of unders. Because I was thinking, what could that score be in Knights Manly? And I'm sort of like, Manly probably good for 20 points. And then, does Newcastle score 14 to 16? That would still be well under 40 points in that game. So that was the way I considered that. Wolfie. Hosier says Cowboys to get smoked. Totally agree with you. Undertaker, I got Storm 10.5 early. So obviously we all lose. So yeah, Undertaker, he wins on a margin of 12 or 13 as well. Early lines they don't always pan out. I'm not going to jinx you, certainly Undertaker, but totally agree with the way you're seeing it. Whereas Colt has gone Cowboys plus 14.5, going to be wet and cold. But does this Cowboys team really want to play in the wet and cold against a side like Melbourne? That's going to take you into the hurt locker. Try scorers, as we love. Labour ATS in this one. Left centers versus Storm all year have been an issue. So I appreciate some try scorer tips. Let's roll into Benny Williamson's pick and find out who he's back.
G'day, TryPod fam. Hope everyone's doing well. Thanks to the lads for having me back on again. Last weekend, that was an atrocious performance for the Broncos. Cobbo, not even close. Stats looked good, but we slipped to 6 losses and 5 wins. Looking to bounce back this week with Jeremiah Nanai. A bit of a roughie. You get him at $3.90 on Bet365. He's actually got a 100% strike rate against the Storm, which is not something you hear all that often, but not relying on a 3-game sample size there. The Cowboys' left edge is their dominant attacking edge, and the connection with Tommy Dearden has been fantastic. Nanai's picked up a try in 5 of his last 6 games, and the Storm's right edge has been their weaker edge by a long way. I think the Cowboys can go down there and compete for at least the first half. Nanai's been in everything recently. Big fan. $3.90 on 365. Good go. See if we can get another winner. Cheers, lads.
Nanai was one of Queensland's best, and there weren't that many last week, were there? Owen saying the Storm in the wet weather is so bad. Ryan saying might look for Storm alt lines. This is the funny thing. You could see Melbourne actually winning this really well. Just if it falls out of reach for North Queensland, I just don't see them keeping up. But Nathan says Cowboys to win as underdogs. So it could be a higher variance game. And in fact, there's a couple more this weekend that I think are super high variance. Ryan says Penrith versus Cowboys was a cold, wet game. And to be fair, Cowboys did exceptionally well in that one. Seriously, if anyone's ever flown from Townsville to Melbourne in winter, you wouldn't pick the Cowboys. So, yeah, definitely think this will be a tough trip. And the Cowboys know what they're in for, but it's very different when you've got to play 80 minutes at Amy Park against a Storm side that I think is going to search for a fair bit of improvement from last week and is going to be very dangerous. And I'll be happy to be on the side that I still believe is the strongest in the competition. Later Friday night, it's my very own boys, the Dolphins hosting the Dragons at Suncorp, and the Dolphins are 4.5-point favourites. The Dolphins are off a bye, and before that, let me remind you, they demolished the Dogs. The Dragons had the bye in week 12. That was after a great win at Suncorp before then backing up that win with a strong showing over Newcastle. For the home side, the Hammer is back from Origin duty. I'm looking closely at Plath and Marshall King in the reserves. That would be very welcome to additions back into this side. Sewer hurt his ankle for the Dragons, so Leilua starts second row. The money man Tuipulotu takes Sloan's spot on the wing. I can't fade the Dragons here. I think, as a Corey comments, I think your team have started to find the right recipe. Like Flanagan at 7, King Tongia in the halves, that's not delivering you your next premiership. But in addition to the playmaking you get out of Gutherson, some skilled forwards like DeBellin, Leilua, Stewart, there's enough there to threaten teams. And I do believe the Dolphins should be favoured. That's why I haven't taken the start with the Dragons. Look, being at home and on a bye, and the fact that the Dolphins, I still think, might be a little underrated by the marketplace at only won 5 of 12. But you've seen flashes from my Finns. Like when the Dolphins are firing on all cylinders, they're a serious footy team. And it's evidenced by, look at how they've gone against all of the top 4. You know, Dogs destroyed them. Melbourne destroyed them. New Zealand, it's a very tight game. Canberra had them beaten at halftime. Look, got rolled second half, but still competitive in the capital there. So I've got a lot of faith in my team, what they're capable of. But this is definitely a danger game for the Finns. And as I said, St George's in a rhythm at the moment, sort of well beaten on Anzac Day, and the Dragons have been in every game since then. Ultimately, I think it's a tight one. I think there's one try in it. And my man to watch is going to be Izzy Katoa, having a wonderful season and could be the difference in a tight one if both sides turn up Friday night, which is how I expect this one to play out. Ryan says I could only lean to the Finns. Corey, who's a diehard Dragons fan, some of the young blokes coming through have been gold. Wolfie, Finns slapping Dogs. I'd be nervous to tip against them. Corey, interesting one for Molo, who got the release and is now lines up, of course, for my Finns. JK, the only team the Dogs threaten is the only team the Dragons threaten is the Knights. Look, the Dragons have had some good games against top 4 sides as well. Actually, to be fair, did beat Melbourne. Who else? Lost by 1.2. The Warriors. Yeah, I'm definitely not underestimating the Dragons. I hope my Finns won't either. Let's move to Saturday. Got a best bet on this one at Shark Park. Cronulla are 5.5 or mostly 6.5 point favourites against the Warriors. And Cronulla do come in off a shock loss. It's one thing to lose to the Roosters when you're a 10-point favourite, but to lose by nearly 30 points at home last outing. Mulatalo suspended, but Sione Katoa makes his season debut. He's been recovering from shoulder surgery. Wilton has also had a shoulder injury, but is back starting in this one. Jackson, did I lost my display again. Jeez, that's annoying, guys. Sorry about that. I'll try and bring it up as I go through the game. Not the easiest, as of course I do my best as a one-man show. Where are we at? The Warriors team news, now that I can't look at the team list. Jackson Ford is getting the start for Barnett. Season-ending injury, as you'd know, in what was a really good win over Souths. And I want to tell you, Warriors fans, it's going to be okay. The rest of the team's playing so well. But, you just hate to see it when you get any major injury where a player's sort of out for the year. So sad, and it's a sad reality of the game. But it just does seem to strike in incredibly unfair ways when you're hitting a beloved pillar of the team. He's in the form of his career, and it is such a promising Warriors season. Of course, the show must go on, and people may talk about even injured player theory, but you do also wonder about whether that's going to be deflating for the Warriors. And of course, simply like the type of player you can't replace. And you've gone from the front row of New Zealand being an absolute strength and as good as any in the competition to, a lot more of a level playing field where that was an area of the park you wanted to dominate. And as I mentioned at the top, you come up against the former Warrior in Fanua Blake. Now, that's like going to be a great clash there with Fisher Harris, but absolutely a game where you would have loved to sort of fight fire with fire if you would have had Barney available. Those are among the reasons why I have gone for Cronulla. I understand New Zealand have won 4 in a row in Sydney and are shooting for 5 in a row here. And the last time these sides met, don't forget, that was the Sean Johnson farewell moment to the NRL where he had the walk-off game-winning try assist. But it's a fairly simple handicap for me. Undertaker says the Sharks are still on his bad list. They're weak-gutted dogs, right? And I know that horrible result 2 weeks ago is going to scare some people off. So tell me now if you do agree with this statement. Ladder position aside, because it's what, 3rd versus 5th, and New Zealand have won, 6 of the last 7, and the Sharks, as I said, got beat at home by 30 last week. So we can all agree the Warriors are in better form. But who is the better team? Because to me, I still strongly believe the Sharks are the better team. So, if you fundamentally disagree with that, you might not want to play the -5.5. But you tell me if you think I'm wrong. There are absolutely no excuses for the Sharks in this one. You've got 0 origin selections or disruptions. You're at home. Where, again, go back to New Zealand, like this horrid run of travel that has included having to play Magic Round, of course, in Australia. Then where else were they? They were playing against the Dragons away, then back to Suncorp, 1 game at home, then over playing South Sydney on Sunday, and then you got to back up here again. So perhaps the team stayed. I'm not actually sure of the travel arrangements, but it's still disrupting. And then you've got this Sharks side that has had 2 weeks resting, but also to stew on their worst game of the year. You've got Fanua Blake, who, will lead the way for a team that stunk it up last home game. That's the only best bet I've lost actually in the last 2 weeks was that Sharks against Roosters. And I feel more confident in Cronulla this week that they'll be keyed in because of how bad Cronulla did play. Because I know that was just a very peculiar scoreline and result and performance. I know Sharks are so much better than that. So this is a game where, of course, I'm laying 13.5 with Melbourne. So I think Melbourne could easily win 20 plus. I think this is another game where I could easily see the Sharks winning by 20 or 30 points. Definitely, we talk about these extreme results this year and not just playing the 50-50 line, but going for the magnified odds because of the way teams can harness momentum. Tell me if you disagree, but I can just see New Zealand fall out of reach. And when New Zealand falls down 12-4 to South Sydney last week, that's a South Sydney that's very under strength. And New Zealand had a lot of confidence they could come back. But to do it 6 days later against a Sharks team that is comprehensively better than South's, I could see New Zealand letting go of the rope. Let me put it that way. So I feel good about the best bet, and it is a game that I think Cronulla could actually win by a wide margin. I'd love to know how you guys see it because I know there's always a good Warriors representation in the chat. Warriors straight up. The Sharks don't worry. The Warriors pack. I mean, I know based on recent form you're going to feel that way, but I think a fresh side that's off a bye and no Barney, you're going to miss it. Undertake a great spot for Sharks, off a shocker and a bye, exactly. Try scorer, Metcalf absolutely on fire against Sharks. Halves need some work. Metcalf to dominate once again. Waz halves are in form. Capes at centre is a great play. Ryan says, I think the Sharks are better, but I know I'm lower on the Waz and higher on the Sharks than most people. Well, you and I are pretty aligned there then. Ryan, try scorer says, agree, but the Sharks just can't really get it together and dominate. Much better lineup on paper, but can't seem to flog teams. I know someone questioned that 2 weeks ago when I picked Sharks to flog Roosters. The Sharks actually have put a few teams to the sword this year, to be fair. Like not as consistent as they should be, but to me, that's inexcusable if Cronulla doesn't finish top 4 this year. Just the fact that with the squad they've got and the fact that nobody gets pulled out for Origin, you've got to be banking wins this time of year. So that's what I expect Cronulla to do. Can't buy into the Sharks, but I do love the Warriors team on paper to give a real shake. JK, Blake isn't playing as well as he did for the Warriors. Warriors 1-12. Of course, I'd dare say there's a little bit of bias in some of these picks, but respect the way people see it. And Rob says due a loss, unfortunately. And look, I'm not one to make best bets or tips on what is sort of due, but it's going to be very easy to say in retrospect. And that's the whole purpose of the pod. I try and tell you what I think people will be saying after the game, but I try and tell you before the game, because it's easy to come up with narratives afterwards. You can say, oh, well, of course, the Warriors were in far better form. That's why they won. And if the Warriors lose, people will say, lot of travel, the Barnett loss hurt, Cronulla was in a mood, and New Zealand was due to lose one. So I think that could be the case here. Let's roll on, because this is another fascinating one on our Saturday night. You know, we go from third versus fifth and two sides that are fighting for top four to the two worst teams in the comp on form. Is anyone going to disagree with that? Broncos, Titans. So it's at Suncorp, and Brisbane, don't forget, started the season 4-1. But since then, the last 7, Brisbane has gone 1-6. However, despite those struggles, the Broncos are still a 10.5-point favourite here. And the season, you know, that says a lot about the Gold Coast struggles, of course, but the season really is at risk of slipping away here for Brisbane. I touched on that on Sunday. We really had a whole segment dedicated to that in the recap. Check it out if you haven't yet, especially because there are not going to be many more recaps this year, I'm sorry to say. But, you know, one thing we brought up was odds for Brisbane to miss the finals, and it was 220 on Sunday night. I said on the spot, without analysing their schedule, I thought that should be closer to Pick'em. The market has shifted further in that direction. Walsh is back at 1, as you can see with the team list. So he's been out with a knee injury. And then, of course, there was a disastrous night for Arthurs at the back at the 4 Pines. Carrigan moves to lock. That will please the Padonis. Piakura starting there in the second row. Brimson's going to have to clear concussion protocol. You can't see him in the team list, but he's named at 18 after being withdrawn from coming concussion on captain's run, I think it was. Jojo Fafita joins David Fafita among the Titans' injuries, and then Sam Verrills, similar to Jojo, broke his hand last game. So Mulaney starting at 9. And I said to Clarkey, it was yesterday or the day before, like, you're either catching Brisbane at a great time or you're catching them at the worst time. Because if Brisbane are totally broken, and as bad as everyone blasting them in the comments is saying, and like I've been responsible for some of these posts. I've been poking fun at Brisbane because I know they got a massive fan base. I know it basically gets a reaction, and that's just what you do. Like, you either love Brisbane or you sort of hate them, so it gets people fired up. But like, there's a lot of people, even Broncos fans, that are just absolutely blasting this team. And if the team is as bad, and if the players are just all prima donnas and don't care about the fan base or about, you know, the massive money that they're on, and don't, you know, want to bleed for the club, then, you know, Brisbane will lose this week too. Walsh is not going to save them. However, there is still a lot of footy yet to be played this year. Brisbane's destiny is still within their own hands, and you could easily see Brisbane bouncing back here. You get a soft kill. Sometimes when you're struggling, you don't really want to play somebody who on their A game, you can't beat them anyway. But the Titans are a team that, you know, could hand over the 2 points without much fight. We've seen that in other weeks. So you get a soft kill over the Southeast Queensland little brother. It could be just what the doctor ordered for the Broncos to play themselves back into form. I could definitely see Brisbane blasting the Titans off the park on Saturday night. I just look at those lineups. I can't really see any facets of the game where I think the Titans would exercise a clear advantage. So while I said the line was minus 10.5, as Frizy Boy says, all the negative talk will fire the Broncos up and they'll play like they did against the Bulldogs. Like, it's 10.5 in most places, but it is also 8.5 on Ladbrokes. I gave a minus 8.5 strong consideration. The reason I stayed off in the end is that the Titans, as I said last week, they are as ugly as Brisbane, if not more. Probably the Titans have been worse than Brisbane this year. It's just they're not attached to the same expectations. And however, as I covered on Sunday, the Titans also aren't as bad as everybody thinks. Like, I watch the Titans closely every week, and there is a decent footy in there. There's a decent footy team in there somewhere. It's just, as I say, the Titans don't do it for 80. They hurt themselves more than any other team. But I just wonder if, you know, a side that shoots himself in the foot so often, if those are the easiest types of flaws to eradicate in your own game. And plus, you've also got to look at the Titans, really, of any team in the comp. Probably the Titans are the least likely to make the 8 this year. And I think that would be, even the most optimistic Titans fan doesn't see finals footy on the horizon. But in front of a big crowd against Brisbane, these are as big as it's going to get and as important as it's going to get for the Gold Coast. So you don't expect a no-show out of the Titans. So I think it'll be a pressure relieving win for the Broncos. It's funny because there's a comment there, Titans could smell blood in the water. Like, they'll see the vulnerability in Brisbane, they can attack, but they'll also be wary of sort of that wounded bull that can really kick. I think Brisbane could win this really well. So this is another absolute high variance game. The line's 8.5. Like, obviously, you lay the 8.5 if you like Brisbane. You take the plus 10.5 if you like the Titans. But if you like the Titans, you also play them straight up to win. And if you like Brisbane, you also play Brisbane to win by 25 or more, right? Because I think it's absolutely a high variance game with sort of fat tails on that normal distribution. So it really comes down to Brisbane's attitude as much as anything. I do think Brisbane wins it well. I want to read your comments because I know there'll be lots of opinions on this game. But let's just also admit that I thought Brisbane was going to win against the Roosters. I thought they were going to go over to New Zealand and beat the Warriors. I thought they were definitely going to win a couple of weeks ago at home on a Sunday against the Dragons. I even said, I'm never going to twist the truth, and it's all there on record. I didn't have a best bet against Manly, but I thought Brisbane, who were, a 2.5-point favourite, I thought Brisbane would deserve to be, and I thought when push come to shove, Brisbane would win last week, and they weren't even close. So it just doesn't all add up to me. I can't get a good read on this team. When are they going to be Broncos like they were against the Dogs, and when are they going to be Donkeys? Let's read some of your comments. Make Tristan Merlehan a sharpshooter. I don't know how I don't take the Titans. Titans money line on 365 has been fired because of early payout. That's if you lead by 14 or more. Ryan, happy to pass the game. Colt, Titans are in for a tough night. Seeing Walsh at the back scares me. Yeah, someone says, I have no idea what will happen. Walsh played better at the Wars too. I saw someone else commenting that Walsh should have never left the Warriors. Clarkey and Blake hanging out for this game. Yeah, opportunity to kick an opponent when they're down, but also you could wear the brunt of Brisbane's frustration and Brisbane trying to get everyone off their back. Corey says the Titans played all right last week, just don't pay the refs in the bunker enough to get the calls. Like, that's the thing. The Titans should have covered against Melbourne. That overturned dummy half try by Verrills was bogus, but the Titans also gifted Melbourne 3 other tries. You can't really blame refs. You've really got to look inward there. This is the first time Bronx have their starting lineup this year. Can't see Renault allowing any kind of loss. Broncos to take it and do well. The Titans will definitely test them, though. You do look at like Tom Weaver and Kieran Foran in the halves against Mam and Reynolds. So it should be big advantage Brisbane. And I'm sure the sharp ATS boys will find some Titans try. Ryan, Titans by 4 or Broncos by 42. So that's sort of my thoughts exactly. Have I missed that big milestone there? It said project. No, who said that? Zed says Renault's 300th game. My apologies if I've missed that because I'm not a big one into sort of betting into the milestones, but I do try and mention that because I do feel like it can be an intangible that we should mention. Maybe someone else could help me out and fact check. Is it Reynolds' 300th game this weekend? Project Spartan, if you can't get an advertised deal, why don't you add a small cost to your best bets? I know you don't want to. Done it free for a long time. Yeah, well, yes, this is the 11th year and it's been completely free, and I just want to do what's best by the audience. But to be completely honest, every option is going to be on the table sort of into the future in terms of just me figuring out whether doing this much longer is viable or not. Lee says, I'm certain this is going to be a crazy week of results. I finally got top of my pub tipping comp, but I'm nervous. Nice one, Lee. Heathy, I've sacked the UCs. I won't elaborate on that. And Nathan confirms it is Renault's 300th game. So yeah, maybe I should just be on Brisbane -8.5. I sort of feel like a lot of people have had it with Brisbane and won't be on them for that reason, and the line is a bit lighter. But then again, there's really nobody rushing out there to back the Titans either. So that's why I mentioned in this one, like, all eyes on this game. It is really important, but it's basically the two worst teams to watch in terms of form in the last 2 months of footy. So even in the comments, I can see your opinions are split. Here's the third and final game where I have a best bet: Raiders, Rabbitohs. And the line is 8.5. We've got a Canberra team that's won 8 of the last 9, celebrating Papali'i, breaking the Raiders record for games. It's at GIO. Fogarty back in the team list after being a late out last week. That made that win over the Roosters all the more impressive. That was a game we really sunk our teeth into because we needed to. That was a wild one. So, we covered that well in the recap. But the Raiders got a glimpse of the future with the two Ethans pairing up in the halves. And notably, with a bye coming up for Canberra, you've got Fogarty, who gets ruled out with a groin injury last week. So would you really play Jamal Fogarty this weekend when you could actually keep him on ice and give him like a full 2 more weeks to recover? I wouldn't be surprised at all if Jamal is withdrawn again. And the thing is as well, Ricky has every right to have confidence in the young brigade. As for Souths, they've done seriously well. You look at them, they're 9th on the ladder, 6-6. But given the experience that's been sidelined so far this year, the Rabbitohs are in a great position and get a big boost this week. And that's the main reason why I will take the +8.5. Whiten is back in the centres, Walker back in the halves. Humphreys remains at 7. Kaloa-Matangi is one of the players that's banging down the door, perhaps to replace Barnett for the Blues. And speaking of origin selections, Horsburgh has to be under heavy consideration to get a Maroons jersey, doesn't he? Look, of course, Canberra are the real deal. Undertaker's been in the chat tonight, and he did a really great comprehensive post for a futures play on Canberra to win the minor premiership with an in-depth schedule analysis. It's a very friendly schedule the rest of the way for Raiders, and you pair that with Canberra's form, and it makes a lot of sense. However, after that Roosters win, and it was a mighty win at that when you talk about the twists and turns and adversity for Canberra in that game, Ricky said, we need a bye, we need a break badly. And that really pricked my ears up because he's already sort of giving his team an out, and he's highlighting the fact that the team could be low on juice. But then in the presser, they went on to talk about the importance of Papali'i's record. And Papali'i said, we're going to empty the tank before our bye, for our best mate. So there's reasons to say why the Raiders will play really well here. And, of course, plenty of punters will be backing them. But I'm on Souths because I think the Bunnies are really live here with a chance to win this one. Big inclusions. Of course, I've got respect for the Raiders, but the thing is the marketplace has very much cottoned on to how good Canberra are. And I haven't been high on the Bunnies. I didn't think they could navigate the amount of key position losses they have, as well as Bennett has managed. But the Bunnies have exceeded my expectations, though they didn't cover last week, thankfully. And I actually think Bennett's forward pack can go toe-to-toe with Canberra here and set up a great game. So, of course, Canberra should be favourites. But for me, I thought a fair line would be closer to 6, and you can drop that another point or a 1.5 if Fogarty gets ruled out, which I think is 50-50 as well. So I reckon entertaining game here. If it's going to be a cracker, give me that head start at +8.5. What do you guys reckon? Can Souths keep this one close? Canberra wins, says Branko. Trubbish, I've seen enough from Broncos. Walsh isn't fixing them, so he's taking Titans on the previous game. Another profile name I can't pronounce. Personally, I live in Colorado. We have some good players, but we ain't winning nothing. Not sure which sport. What sport's that? Baseball? It's funny. Weeks, Latrell, a ball-running fullbacks, but also couldn't be more different in style. Yeah, like Latrell, they're both in amazing form. Like Latrell's that guy that he conserves energy for big periods and then gets accused of being lazy, but he can impact a game like no other when he really chooses to inject himself. What do you think of Ethan Sanders? I think Ethan Sanders, can have an outstanding career. I think this guy can go and play rep footy. Like, I think he's been awesome and such a running threat. Still a young player. Sorry, I actually just made a mistake there. For some reason, my brain took me to Ethan Strange. What do I think of Ethan Sanders? I won't put such lofty projections on him because that was his first start for Canberra. But definitely, you can understand why they've let Fogarty go because they see the potential there. And it's interesting as well that Sanders was let go by Para, and then of course they lost Brown. They didn't end up getting Galvin. So I don't know why. I guess Ethan Strange, Ethan Sanders, you can get a bit mixed up. They're both playing in the halves for Canberra. Drubby says Rabbits plus 8.5 is a steal. White and Walker in, Fogarty maybe not playing. So that's kind of the way I see it as well. And Timoko playing his 100th. JK likes Souths in the arm wrestle. Colt likes the best bet as well. There's some nastier comments that we don't have to cover. Luke definitely likes the Rabbitohs line. And Brent would be happy to chip in some dollars to keep Potter alive. Oh, look, appreciate it, guys. Let's see where this season takes me. I feel like owe you guys to deliver the best show, the best tips, and it's in my interest as well to deliver the best possible tips. I had a horror year last year, by anyone's standard and by my own admission. So this is my bounce back year. If I don't deliver the goods this year, then who really wants to keep following the pod, in all honesty? And I put the pressure on myself before the season when I said, if it's not a winning season, then I'll change up the format completely. So let me just focus on trying to deliver the best. And then I've got the faith that things will work out. Where are the other sharpshooters? Nicole was not available tonight. Benny Howard's not always available. And you know what? 1209 Geo, Undertaker's tip is on Raiders. Is on this Raiders Souths game, so we get to listen to it right now.
G'day guys, my play of the week, I'm going to go against my brand and take an over, 47.5, $1.91 bet 365 in Canberra versus Souths. There's been 5 games played in Canberra this season and only one of them has failed to hit 52 points or more. There's been some huge scores we've seen there. Nice sunny day on Sunday in the nation's capital. I'm expecting more of the same. Souths are getting a few key players back which will help their ability to score points. We got Jack Whiten and Cody Walker returning there. Canberra is scoring points on anyone. Such an exciting backline there. They're doing great things there. So more of the same. Overs into Canberra's game. Love it. Let's go.
The Undertaker with overs. Well, it's rare that Undertaker's going to play an over. So when he does, you sort of want to pay attention. It's like if I tip against the Finns, that's not common, but I'm probably got strong reasoning. So there you go. And someone was calling out for another sharpshooter tip, and you got it on demand. Let's move later. Sunday, Tigers Panthers at CommBank. Penrith are minus 9.5 point favourites. I'll scroll down on the display so you can run your eye over the starting 13s. Penrith remains alive this year. All the reps backed up after Origin 1. A very professional performance over Para. Named the same 17 this week. Now for West, is Latu Fayunu the long-term solution to replace Galvin? He is back from his thumb injury this week and will start at 14 for West. Mason remains at 6 and had a lot of impressive moments against the Cowboys. However, Twal and Hunt were casualties of that game, that near comeback. I'm grateful for that fight back, but did it take a bit out of West? You sort of charge all the way back in the second half, but fall agonizingly short. Some of the reasons I liked the Tigers for a best bet last week do still apply. I'm still looking at Luai Appy on the outside of the rep arena. I'm looking at Terrell May. Who did I mention before? Kaloa Matangi. Does he come in to replace Barnett? Yuto Kamanu was in the reserves, so he'd be a logical candidate as well. Hope he has a big game for Melbourne. Terrell May still has a chance as well with a big performance here. The Tigers are still a team with a point to prove. But the problem is we all know what Penrith can do, and we all understand as well as Penrith does that the Panthers can't mess around at this point. If they want to play meaningful footy down the home stretch, if they want any chance of sort of defending their premiership in the finals, Penrith have to win these type of games. They have to win the games when all of their big players are available. And sometimes when you are betting against a short favourite, you're hoping that they're going to be a little bit lackadaisical, could be caught napping, but that's just not going to be the case here. I mean, Wests are still higher on the ladder than Penrith, and they're both going to be up for this game. It's also the Cleary versus Luai matchup for the first time. It's interesting because Cleary played against Moses last week, bested him, and that's his current Blues halves partner. And now his former 4-in-a-row foil is taking him on. That'll add some extra spice with the former Panthers playing for West. And ultimately, I just think this line's appropriate. Let me know if you've got a strong lean on this one, guys. But I reckon Penrith wins by 8 to 10. That's where the line's sitting, so that's why I'm sitting it out. Dogs Eels on the King's birthday weekend, public holiday. That's a Monday game, is the final one for us to cover. And of course, Canterbury, who sit top of the ladder, are an 8.5 point favourite. Sorry, I scroll down so you can see more of the players involved. And Galvin, you all wanted to know, where's Galvin lining up? Well, he's in the reserves for Canterbury. And from the interview with Serraldo, as I understand it, let me know if sort of any more news has come out the Savo. Obviously, the Bulldogs want to keep Parramatta guessing, but Serraldo did pretty much say Sexton gets to start at 7 and Lockie has to earn his way in. So I don't think Galvin's going to switch in and play halves. I think there's actually a chance Galvin could play reserve grade this week. Or do they bring him in via the bench? But it's a bit hard to – you don't want to mess up the composition of this team too much because, like, Hayward has done such a good job at 14. And, like, Reid Marnie is going to get released, but for now he's still the starting hooker. But the big news for the Dogs as well is that Kiraz is back from injury, and then Mann, King, and Crichton all return from rep duty. The Eels have subbed out Samrani, who, again, against Penrith, Samrani came mighty close to scoring and putting Para in command with 20 to go last week. He's out. Penasini is in. These sides have met earlier this year, and I thought Para was just hopeless in a low-scoring dour encounter against the Dogs. But I believe there was no Lomax. There certainly was no Moses. And you've got a signing like Dylan Walker that's made a big difference too. So Para is a totally different team. Yes, they sit, are they currently last? But they're actually a very decent team. The defense has improved a lot. And then those players I just mentioned add so much more to Para's attack. Look, I still think I was probably right saying Moses could win the Dally M this year. I didn't know he was going to miss the first 7 games. I think he's as important to any team as anybody in the world. The thing about the Dogs, though, is they're off an awful loss and off a bye, and then you get the big guns back in. So I don't really want to go against that for Canterbury. But put it this way, it's first versus 16th, and it's going to be a bit closer than that in reality. There's reasons to sort of take both sides on the line, I do think. And I've got no doubt that a lot of multis will roll through Canterbury into Monday. And I think I have to pick Canterbury to win this, but I'm not confident in the margin. How do you guys see this one? Sort of some general comments about the pod and the value of the pod that I try not to read or I'll probably get embarrassed. Wolfie, where's it played? Tigers normally show up at Leichhardt. No, that Tigers Panthers is at Combank. Branko, Dogs will win. Zed, Eels might sneak up on them. Jag will win. Different team since Moses has returned. Totally agree. And Kiwi Tomahawk, commenting on the best bet, how much money have you lost people betting against the Wars this year? I mean, I was on the Wars last week, mate. That is a fair question in terms of how have I gone in Wars games, because I know I've got a couple wrong, but I don't think I've been too far off the mark with Warriors games. But I know there's always pushback when I go against them. So, if that's the way you see it, you can get some very mighty odds on New Zealand this week. I don't think it's a great spot for them. But, hey, if the Warriors win against arrested Cronulla this week with no Barnett, then, they're only going to massively elevate in my eyes, because this is a horrific spot for the Warriors, I feel, on Saturday night. But appreciate that. Plenty of people see it differently. Bulldogs by around 18. Luke, agree with Shark spot. Colt, Bulldogs 1-12. Frizy, remember a game a few years ago and the Eels won paying $13. You're right. And I'm pretty sure that was the same long weekend. And was it everybody on the Dogs to blow out the Eels, and it was like the year where Eels were like bottom 2, and then the Eels actually got the surprise win. I want to look that one up again. I think it's also happened the other way around. Wasn't there a year where the Eels were big favourites against the Dogs, and then the Dogs smoked Para when no one saw it coming? But yeah, I think that this has become the sort of traditional game on the long weekend. So naturally, the multis roll into it. And yeah, I didn't have a play on that one. But for the third straight week, I have 3 best bets. I can quickly chuck them up on the screen again if I find them for you guys to run your eyes over. And that's going to do it. Like, apologies again that like it did really hurt me. You know what? To tell you guys that I'm not going to consistently be able to deliver the Sunday night show. I literally got people privately messaging me saying, you know, that it makes their Monday morning commute that much more enjoyable. And it, like, honestly, really tears me apart to sort of take that away from people. If I get a chance, maybe I drop a surprise, unexpected show, but just wanted to let you guys know not to sort of expect the show each week or hang out for it when I can't commit to that. And it is all part of like my greater plan to hopefully just be able to sustain everything that I do put into the Tuesday show. So I'll still make a big effort to carry on the conversation in the comments throughout the week with everybody. Best of luck with your betting and your tips this weekend. And now I have to start saying each week after the preview, see you next Tuesday. Lego.